There are moments that split your life in half, before and after. They don't come with warning signs or dramatic music. They sneak up on you, disguised as an ordinary evening, a casual conversation, a simple sentence that detonates everything you thought was solid. This was one of those moments. Mara stood in front of the hallway mirror, adjusting the strap of her red dress, her reflection smirking back at her. She barely glanced at me as she picked up her purse, casually tossing out the words that would turn my world inside out. I'm off on a date. Try not to be too jealous. For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. Maybe she was joking, some kind of twisted, bizarre attempt at humor. But then I saw the way she shifted her weight, the way she deliberately avoided my gaze. That's when I knew this wasn't a joke. My mouth went dry. My fingers gripped the edge of the kitchen counter as my mind scrambled for an explanation, something that could make sense of the absurdity of what I had just heard. "Excuse me?" I finally said, my voice steadier than I expected. Mara let out a soft sigh, like she was already exhausted by the conversation. "You heard me," she said, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "I have plans tonight, with someone else." It wasn't just the words. It was how she said them. So effortlessly, so unapologetically, as if this was completely normal. As if she had every right to stand in front of me, wearing a dress I had bought for her, and announce that she was going on a date. A date! The word hit me like a punch to the gut. I should have yelled. I should have demanded answers. I should have done something. But all I did was stand there, staring at the woman I thought I knew, realizing in real time that I didn't know her at all. I forced a slow breath. "And I suppose you expect me to just accept this?" Her lips curved into that smirk again, the one that had once felt playful, charming. Now it felt cruel. "I expect you to be an adult about it," she said, like she was explaining something obvious to a child. "We've been together for years, right? Marriage gets boring. I just want to experience more options." I let out a breathless laugh, but there was no humor in it. My pulse pounded in my ears, but outwardly I was calm. Too calm. "So let me get this straight," I said, my voice level. "You're just openly seeing someone else now? No discussion? No pretend to care what I think?" She shrugged, like we were talking about returning a sweater she didn't like. "I figured you'd find out sooner or later," she said. "So why hide it? It's not like I'm leaving you." That's when something inside me clicked. I had been standing on the edge of denial, waiting for her to give me a reason to believe this was some kind of misunderstanding. But it wasn't. Mara wasn't sorry. She wasn't even hesitant. She had already made her decision. Now, it was my turn to make mine. And something told me that by the time the night was over, she wouldn't be smirking anymore. I watched her standing there, adjusting her dress in the mirror like nothing was wrong. Like she hadn't just shattered the very foundation of our marriage with a casual smirk and a few thoughtless words. A date. She was going on a date with someone else. My heartbeat was eerily steady, my mind sharper than it should have been in a moment like this. A part of me was waiting for anger to explode, to take over, to shake the walls of this house with the force of my reaction. But it didn't come. Not yet. Instead, I felt awake. I had spent the last few years in comfortable haze, moving through life like a man who thought he had it all figured out. I wasn't the guy who checked his wife's phone, or questioned her whereabouts, or played the role of the paranoid, jealous husband. I trusted her. I had no reason not to. Until now. Mara sighed, turning her gaze back to me, clearly irritated that I hadn't reacted the way she expected. "What?" she said, shifting her purse to her other shoulder. "You're acting weird." Weird. I wanted to laugh. Maybe I even did. A dry, empty sound leaving my throat. "How long?" I asked instead, my voice eerily even. She blinked. "How long what?" I gave her a slow, pointed look. "How long have you been doing this behind my back?" Mara rolled her eyes, as if I were being dramatic, as if I had just asked her something as mundane as what was for dinner. "Don't be like that," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "It's not a big deal." Not a big deal. The words bounced around my skull, echoing over and over until I wasn't sure if I had even heard them right. I inhaled deeply, gripping the back of the chair in front of me. "Not a big deal," I repeated, tilting my head. "You walking out that door, meeting another man, letting him touch you the way I do. That's not a big deal?" Her lips parted slightly, like she was about to say something. But then she hesitated, just for a second, just enough for me to see it. The flicker of guilt buried beneath all that arrogance. But just as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. She rolled her shoulders back, her usual smugness returning in full force. I didn't say it wasn't important, she said, her voice smooth, controlled. I'm just saying that this is life. People evolve. Relationships change. And frankly, you should be grateful I'm being honest about it. Grateful. The sheer audacity of it made my jaw tighten. I studied her, taking in the way she looked at me, like I was beneath her, like she had already moved past this moment, past me, past everything we had built together. That's when I knew she had been preparing for this. Maybe not this exact conversation, but this moment, the moment where she would finally stop pretending, finally say the words out loud, finally make it real. I took a slow step forward. She didn't flinch, didn't look away. You're not the woman I married, I said quietly. Her smirk widened, like she had been waiting for me to say that. Of course not, she said, her tone light casual. People change. I've changed. Maybe you should too. It was like she was talking to a stranger, like I was the one being unreasonable here. I exhaled through my nose, keeping my emotions on lockdown. And what exactly do you expect me to do with this information, Mara? Her brows lifted, as if the answer was obvious. I expect you to accept it. She took another step toward the door, glancing at her watch. Checking the time like this was just another appointment in her day, like I was just another obligation she had to get through before moving on to more exciting things. She had already made up her mind, and now so had I. I straightened my posture, my hands unclenching. Go. That caught her off guard. Her head tilted slightly, lips parting in surprise. She hadn't expected that. You're okay with this? I smiled, not the kind of smile she was used to. No, I admitted, but you already made your choice. Now it's my turn. She hesitated. For the first time that night, she looked nervous. Good. The silence stretched long after the door clicked shut. Not just any silence. The kind that seeps into your bones, that makes familiar places feel foreign. Mara had walked out like she hadn't just ripped our marriage apart with a smirk and a few careless words. I'm off on a date. Try not to be too jealous. The sentence played in my head on an endless loop, each repetition heavier than the last. I looked around the house, the home we had built together, the framed photos on the walls, the scent of her perfume still lingering in the air, the half-empty coffee mug on the counter from earlier that morning. Everything looked the same, and yet nothing did. I sank into one of the dining chairs, rubbing my temples as my mind raced. How long had she been planning this? How long had I been living in blissful ignorance, thinking we were just another married couple navigating the usual ups and downs? Had she been seeing this other guy for weeks? Months? Years? I wanted to be angry. Wanted to feel the kind of rage that would make me punch a hole in the wall, break something, scream into the void. But I didn't feel any of that. I felt clarity. She had made her choice. And now, for the first time in a long time, I had a choice too. Most men in my position would have confronted their wife immediately. They would have demanded answers, demanded the truth, maybe even begged for an explanation. But I wasn't going to do that. Mara wanted me to react. She wanted a scene. She wanted to see me unravel. Wanted me to prove that I was a pathetic, predictable husband she had already written off in her mind. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Instead, I took a slow breath and reached for my phone. I wasn't calling her. No, that would have been too easy. Instead, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time. An unexpected conversation. Hey, it's me, I said when the line picked up. A pause, then a familiar voice. Eli, I hadn't spoken to my brother in over a year. Not because of some dramatic falling out, but because life had pulled us in different directions. He had moved out of state, built a life of his own, while I had sunk deeper into the routine of marriage, of work, of responsibilities. I need a favor, I said, cutting straight to the point. Another pause. Then, what kind of favor? I hesitated, gripping the phone tighter. I just need to get out of here for a bit. Eli exhaled. You okay? I wasn't sure. But I wasn't about to explain everything over the phone. Not really, I admitted, but I will be. Silence on the other end. Then finally, come on over. I hung up, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door, not bothering to lock it behind me. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I'd be coming back. The drive to Eli's house was longer than I remembered, giving me too much time alone with my thoughts. Mara had never been the kind of woman to settle for an average life. She always wanted more excitement, more adventure, more attention. Maybe I had been blind to it before. Or maybe I had just convinced myself that I was enough for her. Clearly I wasn't. By the time I pulled into Eli's driveway, my decision was already made. I wasn't going to chase her. I wasn't going to fight for a woman who had already walked away from me in her mind long before she walked out that door tonight. I was going to do something she never expected. I was going to let her go. And something told me that in the end, she would regret it more than I ever would. Eli's place hadn't changed much. Same battered leather couch. Same half-drunk cup of coffee sitting on the counter. The air smelled like old books and faint traces of cologne, his world, untouched by the kind of betrayal that had just gutted mine. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me like I was some kind of injured animal that might bite if he got too close. So, he finally said, "Mara's cheating on you." I exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand down my face. Not just cheating. Telling me to my face. Like it's the most normal thing in the world. Like I should be grateful for her honesty. Eli let out a low whistle. Damn. I sat down, elbows on my knees. She thinks she's in control. She thought I'd lose it, start screaming, begging. But I didn't. Good. Eli nodded approvingly. You want to hit something, though? He gestured to the old punching bag hanging in the corner. Might help. I considered it. But my anger wasn't the kind that needed fists. It was the kind that needed precision. Nah, I said, I've got a better plan. Eli arched a brow. Oh. I leaned back, stretching my legs out. She thinks she's untouchable. She thinks she's already won. But I'm not just going to walk away. I'm going to make sure she understands exactly what she threw away. And by the time I'm done, she won't be the one calling the shots anymore. Eli grinned. Now that I want to hear about. I stayed at Eli's that night. Didn't sleep. Didn't drink. Just sat there, thinking, planning. By the time the sun rose, I had my next moves mapped out. First, the house. Mara thought she had the upper hand. But what she didn't know was that I had already spoken to a lawyer. The house was in my name. She might have packed her little overnight bag and strutted out, but she wasn't coming back to the same life she left. Second, the money. She wanted to play games? Fine. But she was about to find out that I had been paying attention. Over the years, she had gotten comfortable. Too comfortable. She didn't bother hiding her spending habits. The shopping sprees, the mysterious charges, the late-night transactions. I had let them slide before, thinking they were just indulgences. Now, they were leverage. Third, the element of surprise. Mara had walked out that door thinking I'd be there when she came back. She had counted on my loyalty, my predictability. But when she returned, she was going to find a version of me she'd never met before. That evening, I drove back home. It felt surreal stepping into the house again, knowing that the foundation of everything had shifted. I could still smell her perfume, faint traces of it clinging to the furniture. The framed pictures of us still lined the walls, mocking me with memories that no longer felt real. I could almost hear her laughter, the way she used to curl up on the couch beside me, her head resting on my shoulder. That version of her was gone. The real Mara was the one who had stood in front of me last night, adjusting the strap of her dress before walking out to be with someone else. A key jingled in the lock. The door swung open. Mara stepped inside, purse in hand, pausing when she saw me sitting at the kitchen table. She wasn't expecting me to be here. That much was clear. "Oh," she said, blinking. "You're home. Where else would I be?" I asked, my tone neutral. She studied me, expecting an outburst, a confrontation. I gave her nothing. "How was your date?" I asked casually. A flicker of something crossed her face. Guilt? Annoyance? It was gone before I could pin it down. "Great, actually." She set her purse down, smirking. "Thanks for asking." I nodded, as if I actually cared. Then I gestured toward the stack of papers on the table. Her gaze followed my hand, and the moment she saw what they were, the smirk vanished. "What's this?" she asked slowly. I didn't answer right away. I let her sit in it, let the weight of what was coming sink in before I spoke. "Divorce papers," I said smoothly. Figured I'd save you the trouble. Her lips parted slightly, stunned. She hadn't expected this. She had expected a fight. She had expected tears, anger, desperation. She had not expected me to be the one calling the shots. "You're serious?" she asked, her voice quieter now. I nodded. Completely. She let out a breathless laugh, but there was no humor in it. "So that's it? You're just done?" I tilted my head, pretending to think about it. Then I smiled. "Yep." She stared at me, And for the first time since this all began, I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Panic. She had been so sure that I would fight for her, that I would beg for her to stay, that I would be too broken to walk away. She had underestimated me. And now, she was realizing it. I stood, grabbing my keys. Pack your things. I said, voice calm, measured. You're leaving tonight. She didn't move, didn't argue, didn't cry. She just nodded, her fingers tightening around the papers as she stared down at them. Because for the first time, Mara understood. She wasn't the one in control anymore. And that realization, that was the real punishment. Mara didn't move at first. She just stood there, her fingers clenched around the divorce papers, staring down at them like they were written in a language she couldn't understand. You're serious? She finally asked, voice quieter now. I didn't answer right away. I let the weight of the moment sit between us. Let her feel the shift in power, the way the ground was no longer as solid as she had assumed. I was serious when I married you, I said finally, and I'm just as serious now. Pack your things. You're leaving tonight. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. You're being ridiculous. No, I'm being done. A pause. Her jaw tightened. Where do you expect me to go? I shrugged. Not my problem. I'm sure one of your options will be happy to take you in. She flinched at that, and for the first time, I saw a crack in her composure. Mara had spent so much time thinking she held all the cards that the idea of me making a move, of me taking control, hadn't even been on her radar. So that's it, she asked. You're not even going to try to talk about this? I let out a slow breath and met her gaze. When you walked out that door last night, you made it clear you didn't care about this marriage. I'm just doing what you thought I wasn't capable of, letting go. She swallowed hard, her fingers twitching at her side. I didn't think you'd just throw it all away. Neither did I admitted, until you made me realize I had nothing left to hold on to. She looked away, biting her lip, as if searching for the right thing to say, the right angle to take. The problem was, she was too late. The damage was done, and she had been the one swinging the wrecking ball. I didn't mean for it to be like this, she muttered. I almost laughed. How did you mean for it to be, Mara? Did you think I'd sit around, waiting for you to come back? That I'd fight for you? That I'd beg? Her silence was answer enough. I stepped back, giving her room. Pack your things. I want you out by midnight. Her eyes flickered with something close to panic, but she masked it quickly. You can't force me out of the house. I smirked. Actually, I can. It's in my name. Lawyer confirmed it this morning. That hit home. I saw the realization dawn in her eyes. She had assumed I'd be too emotional to think clearly, too broken to take action. She had counted on my complacency. She had miscalculated. You really planned this out, huh? She muttered, running a hand through her hair. You planned to cheat. I planned to walk away. I guess we both got what we wanted. Her breath hitched slightly. She blinked quickly, as if trying to keep herself together. I wasn't sure if it was out of regret, frustration, or just sheer disbelief that she had actually lost this game. Fine, she finally said. I'll go. She turned and walked toward the bedroom, leaving the divorce papers on the table. I picked them up and placed them back in front of me, waiting for the last piece of this mess to fall into place. An hour passed. Then, too, I heard drawers open, bags being packed, zippers being yanked closed with more force than necessary. Mara was stalling. I could feel it in the air. She wanted me to stop her. She wanted me to break, to tell her we could fix this, that she didn't have to go. But I wasn't that man anymore. When she finally emerged, suitcase in hand, she hesitated at the threshold of the front door. You know, we were happy once, she said softly. I nodded. Yeah, but once isn't enough. Her eyes searched mine, looking for any sign of weakness, any opening she could exploit. She found none. I reached for the door handle, pulling it open for her. Take care, Mara. She exhaled, hesitated for half a second longer, then stepped out. The door clicked shut behind her. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It wasn't suffocating. It wasn't filled with grief or regret. It was peace. For the first time in a long time, I was free, and she was the one left standing on the outside, realizing too late that she had played herself. The moment the door clicked shut behind her, I just stood there, listening to the silence she left in her wake. It wasn't the kind of silence that a person fills with grief or regret. It was clean, final. I ran a hand over my face, exhaling slowly. I had expected more from her. More fight, more resistance. maybe even an attempt to manipulate the situation in her favor. But in the end, all she had was a suitcase and the realization that she had overplayed her hand. I walked through the house, pausing in the doorway of what used to be our bedroom. The closet doors hung slightly open, exposing the empty spaces where her clothes used to be. The vanity, once cluttered with her perfumes and jewelry, was bare. Even the bed, still made from the morning before she walked out of my life, looked like it belonged to someone else. For the first time in years, I wasn't sharing this space. And strangely, that thought didn't bring sadness. It brought relief. I went back downstairs, poured myself a drink, and sat at the kitchen table. The same table where, just a day ago, she had stood over me with that smug little smirk, telling me she had options. That marriage was boring. That I should be grateful she was being honest. I took a slow sip, letting the burn settle. Now she had all the freedom she wanted, and I had mine. My phone buzzed on the table. I picked it up, expecting a final message from Mara. Some last-ditch attempt to reclaim control. But it wasn't her. "Eli, you good?" I smirked and typed back, "Never better." There was a pause before his reply came through. Did she fight it? I took another sip of my drink, staring at the half-empty house around me. No, she left. Another pause. Damn, guess she really thought she had you beat. She did. I set my phone down, leaning back in my chair. But she was wrong. Morning came, and with it, the realization that for the first time in years, I had no obligations to anyone but myself. No text from Mara asking where I was. No passive-aggressive remarks about things left undone. No pretending that what we had was still something worth holding on to. I got up, showered, made coffee, and sat by the window. The world outside moved on, completely unaware that everything had changed. And as I sipped my coffee, I realized something. She had expected a war. She had expected a man who would beg, who would fight, who would crumble under the weight of betrayal. Instead, she got silence, indifference, freedom, and that, more than anything, was the real punishment. I picked up my phone, scrolled to our last conversation, and without hesitation, deleted her number. By the time she realized what she had lost, I would be long gone, and she would be the one left wondering how she had miscalculated so badly. The house was quiet. The air was light. And for the first time in a long, long time, I was free.